Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today we're going to take a look at Fedora 35. I'm out at getfedora.org right now, and here Fedora 35 was just released a couple of days ago as of the time of this video, and so I'm really excited to try this out. And here we have our Fedora workstation download link here, and also up here if you want to see a little bit more about what Fedora 35 is about. You can just click on the Fedora 35 released announcement and it'll take you out to their blog post where it kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of what's new in Fedora. And so in here they're showing that Fedora Workstation focuses on the desktop, of course, and in particular it's geared towards software developers who want a just works Linux operating system experience. This release features GNOME 41, which was just recently released as well. So GNOME 41 includes improvements in power management, and the software has also been overhauled, and the Gnome software has also been overhauled in 41. So the Gnome software package manager apparently has a new look in order to make it easier to browse and discover applications. So that'll be interesting, kind of interested in seeing that. Also introduces Connections, which is a new client for VNC and RDP-based remote desktop. Cool. Also, they said they've made improvements to in Fedora Cloud in this release, since many public cloud providers now support UEFI boot. Cloud images have hybrid boot support, unifying the legacy BIOS and the UEFI boot modes. Following the change to ButterFS, the default file system in Fedora 33, Fedora Cloud 35 now offers ButterFS. So that's cool to know too. And then of course they produce more than just the editions. Fedora Spins and Labs target a variety of audiences and use cases. And you have other spins such as Fedora LXQt and Kyanite, which is a reprovisional desktop system featuring the KDE Plasma desktop. And then of course they have the alternate architectures available too, which is your ARM, AA, AR64 Power, and S390X. Nice. So improvements to the desktop. They're also noting that we have switched the default audio system to Pipewire in Fedora 34, and now they're improving this by adding the new Wire Plumber session manager. Wire Plumber allows for more customization of the policy and rules for audio and video. It provides a richer development experience and adds bindings for most languages. All right. If you enable the third-party repositories that ship in Fedora Linux desktop variants, those repositories are now immediately available. That is cool. I know the thing I always had to do after I installed Fedora was to go out and get RPM Fusion and then install it and get it set up so I could have access to other things, third-party stuff. And so from what I'm reading here, it sounds like here that it is now added in automatically, probably with an option, a checkbox or something to add the third party to it. Looking forward to that as well. Also, enabling the third-party repositories now makes selected Flathub applications available via filtered Flathub remote. That's cool too. Personally, I like Flathub a lot, so I have a lot of applications that I run on Flathub. It makes it a lot easier, especially if you're changing a distro or for whatever reason you got to reinstall. If you have a Flathub and you save your var folder in your home folder and preserve that, then if you have to do a complete reinstall of your system or you're changing distros for whatever reason, you still got your Flathub apps with all their settings and everything in that var folder. And so that really makes things a lot less complicated. Especially if you're a distro hopper, then you'll really appreciate the convenience of that. And for other updates, it says no matter what variant of Fedora you use, you're getting the latest open source the open source world has to offer. Following our first foundation, we've updated key programming languages and system library packages, including Python 3.10, Perl 5.34, and PHP 8. Fedora 35 also includes the 1.0 release of FirewallD, the modern firewall service. Excellent. So, we are excited for you to try this new release. I am excited too. Can't wait to jump in. So, let's go back over to getfedora.org and download this baby and see what is what. So let's head over to Get Fedora. And here's where we started out. We got our Fedora workstation link right here. And also, if you don't like GNOME, you can jump down here to Spins near the bottom here. And then if you click on this, then you can see all the different spins that are available, such as the KDE Plasma, XFCE, LXQt, Mate Compiz, Cinnamon, LXDE, and SOAS Desktop, i3 Tiling Window Manager. So there's a lot of great spins down here, and I've tried some of these spins in the past, and they are really good. When it's on a Fedora, if a Fedora has a spin out, it's going to be really rock solid. So that's another thing to consider. In this video, however, I'm going to stick with the GNOME, since that is the original Fedora official release. And even though I've never really made it a big secret that I'm not a huge fan of GNOME, however, I also like giving things a fair shake. I really think GNOME deserves a fair shake. So let's give it a try and see how it works, because I think GNOME does have a lot of really good features when it comes to using it the way it's meant to be used. You just got to remember, GNOME is kind of like Windows in the sense that you just don't mess with it. Download GNOME and use it the way it is. Don't mess with the extensions and all that, unless you don't mind them breaking from time to time. If you're okay with that and you're kind of a techie kind of guy, then, or gal, then that's just fine. Take advantage of the extensions and then take a break when they break. However, for the average user that doesn't like surprises and interruptions to their workflow, then I recommend just using GNOME just the way it is out of the box and not really customizing it with extensions if you can avoid that. Just accept it. If you're used to having icons on the desktop, you know, just kind of get used to not having them and just roll with it. You might find out that you like it even better than your old setup with the traditional panel on the bottom and icons on the desktop and all that. So everybody's different. And that's the beauty of Linux. It caters to all styles and tastes. And GNOME is just simply a different style and taste, and probably a little more resource heavy. So I would recommend having newer equipment for running GNOME. However, if you have something older, then I would recommend going into the spins and grabbing something lighter like LXDE. Even Cinnamon would probably work. KDE is pretty lightweight too, and XFCE, of course. One of my favorites overall. So I'm going to go ahead and download this, and then I'm going to load it in, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're booting into the live version now, and I just went ahead and hit escape. It started out with a disk check, so if you want to avoid the disk checking, you want to hit the escape button there, and then that'll switch past it. To me, that's just kind of a waste of time, so I don't want to bother with that. However, if you do want to wait through it, then you can. Okay, so it looks like we're booting into our desktop here, our live environment, and we should be seeing the background here sometime before the sun becomes a red giant. All right, we're in our desktop now, and so here's the live version of GNOME, and you can see it starts right off with our choice screen here to try Fedora or to install it to a hard drive. So let's hit try real quick, and then you can see it takes us right into our desktop. And the welcome screen remains open, which is good. So now we have our initial screen. Typically, we could have gone just straight to initial hard drive, but I just wanted to make sure everything kind of booted in okay and our resolution was good and all that. And everything is looking good here. So let's install this into our hard drive. So here we have our Fedora installer. I'm going to go with the defaults, English and English. And then here you can see that it auto-detected our keyboard and our time and date. And so all we need to do is address our installation destination. So I'm going to click that. Then we'll come over here, and automatic is good. So I'm going to leave the storage configuration there. And if you are setting up a daily driver and you want encryption, you can check the box there. That's always kind of handy in case somebody walks in and steals your computer. Might make it a little harder for them to get your data. However, for this, I don't really need that. I'm going to go ahead and proceed on to the next session. So I'm going to hit done up here. So here it's letting us know how much space it's going to take approximately, which is 9.48 gigs, and letting us know that there is space available here, but it's being used for something else because there was an old operating system on here. Do you really want to write over this? And so, yes, I'm going to say so. So what we do is we hit reclaim space here because by default it doesn't want to take the space that the other operating system was using. It was a different spin of Linux. Since it doesn't, it by default kind of wants to install alongside it. I'm going to hit reclaim space, and then that'll allow us to overwrite the whole drive. And then we're all good. So then here we can kind of verify what's going on. And here we can see the Makulu shift from my last review, which is using the other 19.8 gigs of space, and it's got the swap drive. So all we want to do is just hit delete all, and then reclaim space. And that'll clean out the hard drive and make it all good. So over here, now it did a check, and it's showing that everything's okay. So now everything is all looking good. There's no red marks by anything, so we can begin the installation. So now the installation is beginning, easy peasy, and I'm just going to let this run and do its thing, and then I'll be right back when it finishes this part. This will take probably just a couple of minutes. Okay, the install is complete. Didn't take too long. It only took about 8 minutes. And you might be saying, but wait, the clock now says 12:53. Well, I had to take an extra few minutes to wait for my furnace to turn off so I could spare you from all the background noise. So let's finish installation. So when I click this button, it'll reboot, and then it'll continue, I believe, where we would create my user profile and possibly some other stuff. I'll hit finish, and we'll go into the reboot. Or not. Well, I thought it was going to reboot, but no problem. I'll just reboot manually here. Nice splash screen as always. Okay, we're right back in. And now we have our start setup screen. Welcome to Fedora 35. Nice. We'll hit startup, setup. And this is by default your privacy settings, local services, location services, turned on by default. Automatic problem reporting turned on by default. Actually, I'm good with both of these. I don't mind my geographical location being turned on here. That's a personal preference. Some of you may not want that turned on for a lot of reasons, I suppose. However, for me, it's just kind of convenient. I kind of like having it on. Yes, I'm strange. I'm going to hit next. Third-party repositories. Definitely, I want this one. I'm going to hit that, and I love that that option is there now. That's really cool. So this provides access to additional software from selected external sources. They include popular apps as well as firmware that is important for some devices. Some proprietary software is included. Really nice to have. That saves me a step. That was always something I had to do in the past, was to put that in manually. And it's really nice to see that there. I think that's a big improvement. Our next option here is connect your online accounts. So it has a few here you can set by default: Google, Nextcloud, and Microsoft. And I always notice they have Nextcloud. Why don't they have the previous cloud or the current cloud? I don't have Nextcloud. I feel left out. No, okay, I'm kidding. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that. And then let's give ourselves a username. So the full name, you can use a capital letter, and it can be anything. I'll just use the old standby Toadwick. And then our username is generated automatically down here. Also, there's an enterprise login option there if you're setting this up for a business and it's going to be on a network and all that. But for us normal people, all we got to do is hit next. So let's set a password. And it's reminding me that this is a weak, lame password, but it's letting me use it, so I'm good with that. Okay, so we're all done. That should do it. We can start using Fedora Linux. So now we should be logging in here. And now right off the bat, we got our welcome screen here. Typically, I just hit no thanks for the tour, but this is a GNOME 41 tour. I guess we can just jump through it really quick. We can always close out of it if it gets carried away. So pressing the super key to see open windows and apps, which is always a good thing. And I just press the super key and it works. I pressed it again to go back. If we hit next, just type search in the overview to search and launch apps. And what they're referring to is when you hit the Windows key, the search window is right up in here. And so then you can just do a search like for Firefox, for example, and then just press enter and Firefox will launch just like that. Always cool and groovy. Keep on top with workspaces, easily organized windows and all that good stuff. And then your gestures for swiping up and down, 3 fingers. And that's it. Have a nice day. That's the kind of tour I like. Short and sweet, to the point. I'm going to go ahead and close that. If we go up here and we click on our activities button, then we're in our activities screen. And here's our launcher down here. So if I hit that, we got all our software. And then we got our workspace selection up here, which I always kind of like. And our favorites are right here, readily available if we need them. So we got Firefox as our default browser, we got our calendar, and files. So there's our files manager, and we got the nice rounded edges up here. That's nice. I'm liking that. A very sleek, modern look. And then our software center, which has been updated from what I understand in GNOME 41. I'm going to hit Browse Software. It's loading in the Flatpak metadata. That's nice. So I didn't even have to install that separately. If I remember right, in the last version, I had to do all that separately, along with installing RPM Fusion so I could get extra apps and so forth. Because there were some things I just couldn't download without RPM Fusion. That was a bummer. And one thing I like about the GNOME version is their software center. I like the GNOME Software Center. It's always, I thought, been pretty nice. Way better than DNF Dragora. I just never could warm up to that in the other spins. So I think even in the other spins, I would probably download GNOME Software. Or if I was in KDE, Discover probably as an alternative. And that's going to take a little bit to run there. So I'm just going to let that do its thing. That's pretty normal when it comes to launching a package manager for the first time, a GUI package manager. You're going to have to wait for it to download all the metadata and the thumbnails and all the other things that go along with it. So let's see what's in our applications. Well, that's doing its thing. So here we got our typical GNOME stuff here, our contacts, a weather app. Their weather app's kind of cool. And then we got clocks, maps, photos, videos, calculator, text, all the stuff that I would kind of expect to see here. Then we got Fedora Media Writer. I like that. They have a nice media writer. So if you need to write to a USB stick or make a bootable image of even another OS, Media Writer could probably handle it for you. And then we have GNOME Boxes, which is their version of the virtualization software, Virt Manager, KVM, all that. Boxes kind of simplifies it. Not quite as robust as far as options go, but it's really straightforward and easy to use. So Boxes are pretty nice setup there. Then we have System Monitor, Settings, Document Scanner, Cheese, and we got Terminal here. Since I got the Terminal, let me just open that real quick. And let's see if we got anything on here like, I don't think so, but let's try HTOP. And I guess I could just run top real quick. So in top, we got, looks like it's running about 1.2 gigs of RAM, which is pretty typical for GNOME. That's not bad at all. Actually, that's pretty good because a lot of times I get 1.2 gigs on a fresh boot in with nothing running at idle. Right now I have the software center here trying to load stuff in, and I got my files open here. So considering that all that's kind of running, that's actually pretty good. So I'm liking that. Gonna jump back out of here. Let's see if we got NeoFetch. And it doesn't, however, you'll notice that DNF is asking if I would like to install it. That's kind of a nice feature. I like that. So I'm gonna go with a yes on that. And it looks like it's no by default. I'll just hit Y here. I almost said no by mistake. They should actually reverse that. So it's going to go ahead and load all this stuff in. I'm just going to say yes. And I'm sure there's a config file somewhere that will let you change that to Y as default, but I don't know where that is off the top of my head. Okay, so we got NeoFetch, and it automatically ran NeoFetch right after the install. That's pretty cool. So now we can see what we got here. We got our Fedora Linux 35 running 5.14 kernel. So we got the latest and greatest here, it looks like. 5.14.10-300. Yeah. And we've been up 11 minutes already. Wow. So we're running the Bash 5.18 shell, GNOME 41, Mutter window manager, Adwaita theme, and yeah, I thought that was all the standard Adwaita. That's typically what I see on GNOME by default. So all looking really good there. Nice. And Gnome Software is really kind of taking its time there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close that and start it up again. Sometimes that gives things a little kick when you do that, and it kind of... So we'll see if that works. Some might argue that's purely coincidental, but for me it seems like it works. Then I'll go into activities. And under utilities, of course, we got our other stuff here like disk usage analyzer, and then this new one, connections. This was something that I read in at the beginning of the video. And so connections is a VNC/RDP client here that you can use to remotely connect to other workstations and desktops. That's pretty cool. I like that. So utilities is probably kind of like the GNOME box's equivalent to remote networking. Very cool. So if I was going to make a connection, apparently all I'd have to do is pop in a network identifier. We got our RDP here for Windows, and VNC, which is the standard for Linux. However, you can use VNC on Windows as well. So very cool. Pretty much looks like it works just kind of like you would use a remote desktop on a Windows machine. Pop in the address there, the IP address or identifier if you're on the same network, and you're good to go. Then of course we got our image viewer, document viewer, problem reporting, characteristic logs, or characters I mean. That's a nice place to grab characters. I kind of like that little utility. Kind of cool. You can kind of grab smileys and little avatars and stuff like that, copy them, and you know, I bet that'd be kind of handy on YouTube when you're leaving comments. Although the downside about the avatars, pasting them into YouTube comments, is some people probably can't see those, especially if they're in another country and maybe the character code's a little bit different. They might just show up as a little vertical rectangle instead of seeing the actual image. So you want to keep that in mind when you use smileys and emojis and things like that in YouTube comments. I've never really run that across that myself, but I imagine that probably would be an issue in some zones, or even OSs maybe. And then the disk usage analyzer, I've always kind of liked their disk usage analyzer. It's pretty efficient, I think. So it kind of breaks things down into how things are utilized across your disk, what areas are taking up the most space, and so forth. So it's kind of a nice way to get a handle on how your hard drive is being utilized. So here we've gotten our biggest folder is the user folder, the USR, and that's where the most stuff is being stored right now. And that would be normal on a clean install. That should be where most of your stuff is going to be. And then you can even drill down even farther and kind of see how much stuff is in each folder. And it looks like the lib64 probably has the most with about 2 gigs. The overall folder size is about 5.3, not too bad. And then the var and etc or etc, and then nothing in these folders at this time. Looking good. And then if we move on to our next one, it kind of rounds things off with LibreOffice, with Calc, Impress, and Writer. Calc is the equivalent to Microsoft Excel. Impress is kind of equivalent to PowerPoint, and Writer is equivalent to Microsoft Word, which is kind of easy for most people to relate to. And then we have Rhythmbox, and then our tour. Cool. So to me, it looks like just the right combination of apps here not overly bloated with stuff you probably wouldn't need, just all the essentials, and that leaves you room to install the stuff that you want. That's great. And the Software Center is still taking a long time, so I'm not even sure if that's going to update. Maybe that has something to do with me being in a virtual environment. I don't know. Let me just double check and make sure my internet's working. I'm pretty sure it is, so I'll just load in Firefox and just make sure that's working. And it looks fine, so we're good there. Yeah, so our internet connectivity looks fine. That's good. I guess when it's taking that time, I would probably just maybe do a manual update. Sometimes that helps. So I'm going to just do a sudo DNF update. And I think if we do this update here, that'll kind of straighten out the whole thing with Gnome Software Center. Probably should have done this first, because I think that's probably the root of the problem. So I'm going to close that. And typically it's a good idea just to kind of run an update before you do anything. I find in my personal experience that kind of works out a lot better. It kind of clears out the cobwebs. So it's just kind of grabbing everything here now from the repositories, and you can see RPM Fusion is in there for Fedora 35. It's got both the non-free and the free. Very cool. I'm going to go with yes on that. And again, I got the default no. I forgot that it does that. In other distros, the default's always Y, typically. So that confuses me a little bit. Something I guess you got to get used to, unless you know where the config file, where to look in the config file to change that. So I'll let this update run and I'll be right back. Well, that didn't take too long, a little over a minute to download everything. Now it's just running through the upgrades. And we're almost there. 50 of 616. Should be there in any second now. And it looks like our kernel is updated to 5.14.14. So a kernel update there. And our QEMU updating. That's the cool thing I like about the Gnome boxes being in here, is that the QEMU is all installed by default. So another thing you don't have to set up for virtualization by default. And LibreOffice is getting an upgrade to 1.72221. Firefox is upgrading to 94.0-1. Got our HP printer driver. Gnome Shell to 41.0-7. Oh, we got VirtualBox in here as well. I didn't realize that. Very cool. So there's VirtualBox guest editions. So I guess I was wrong about there. Apparently VirtualBox is installed as well. I didn't see that actually when I was in here looking around. All right, we made it all the way through. So that didn't take too long. That was relatively painless. Now I have a feeling that if we open up our Software Center here, that this should update right away now. So with a little luck, it will. Otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. Well, let's take a look at our settings. And I'm also going to open this up because I want to kind of change our theme a little bit, kind of get it off of this vanilla Edweda look. And then if we go into settings, and the software catalog still is taking a while. So maybe that's something that just kind of needs to come off a restart. So I'll kind of come back to that. So we got our network settings, all our standard GNOME look here. So we got network, Bluetooth, our background settings, and the default background settings looks pretty nice in this version of Fedora. A little less vanilla than normal. I like that. And then we got other backgrounds to choose from, which are relatively nice. If you're looking forward to freezing your butt off in the winter, there's a nice background there. Yeah. And we got that if you like being a little warmer. Okay, that looks pretty good. See if my desktop shortcut works. I think it's Super Shift Arrow or Page Up. Yeah, well, I forgot. But anyway, nice looking background anyway. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. That's kind of cool. Kind of keeps things simple. So, okay, yeah, looks like we got 4 workspaces here. Kind of got disoriented. It looks like I'm in the third one. Ah, gotcha. Gotcha. All right. And our Software Center is still going, so I'm just going to close that. And I'm going to try that again after doing a restart. But let's just kind of finish our settings real quick. So we got our notification settings. And again, these are all kind of our standard stuff that we've seen before. And we got our multitasking settings here, active screen edges, which are on. So we can just kind of move it off to the side here. And then it'll maximize it. I closed it. And then our workspace settings, multi-monitor, application switching, all that good stuff. And then our default application is going to be set in here. Our privacy settings, so if you had a change of heart and you decided, I don't want my location to be divulged, you can turn it off right there. And then of course you can also control access to your camera and microphone and so forth. File and history, trash settings, screen locking, diagnostics. So all important things if you're concerned about privacy is right there. And then our online accounts. And here we have a lot more to choose from if you want to integrate with some of your accounts like Google or Microsoft Azure, current cloud, Nextcloud, Flickr, Foursquare, Microsoft, Fedora, yes, Fedora Cloud, and so forth. Then we have our sharing settings. So if you want to share your computer and use connections and have other people or access your machine maybe from another location, from a different machine, you can do that too. That'll kind of give you permission to share that stuff right here. Then of course our sound settings, which is pretty nice. And again, Gnome is using Pipewire and now has the plumber in there. Forgot what it was, Pipewire plumber or something. Which is kind of, you know, pipe, plumber, it all kind of works. And our power settings, balanced by default. It'll blank the screen after 5 minutes. And of course you can adjust that to where you want it. Or you can just say never if you don't want it bothering you. And then your display settings are here. Mouse and touchpad settings. Natural scrolling. And then we got keyboard settings. So if you need to add any different inputs, you can do that here. And printer settings. Also, this has the HP drivers installed by default, which is really great. And that's probably because I chose to add extras there, the third-party settings during the install. And so that kind of allowed that to become available probably through the RPM Fusion and all that. And then we got our color, region, and language, accessibility, user settings. So here's where you'd go to change your avatar. If you want to give it a different look, you can pop in here and find something that you can relate to, and that looks kind of cool. I like that. And change your password, of course, if you need to. Default applications, if you install a different web browser, for example, you can change that right here. Then we got our date and time settings. In case you want your time format a little different, you can do that up here. Or if you don't like 24-hour, you can set it for 12 and all that good stuff. And that would be done right here through AM, PM. Personally, I like the 24-hour. So I'm going to go with that. And then finally our about, which kind of gives us a little bit more information. If you don't install NeoFetch, you can get your info right here. And as you can see, our windowing system is Wayland by default. Very cool. And here's where you can check for your software updates, which we just did not too long ago. So that's all up to date. And speaking of up to date, now that we've run our software update here, I'm going to restart this and see if our software center works after that. And I suspect that it probably will now that I ran the update, but I think it's going to need a restart. We'll just run through that restart and then that should kind of do the trick, hopefully. Okay, we're at our login screen here. I'll just log in. Yeah, that's kind of a nice looking login screen. I like it. And I see my avatar updated, my profile pic. Okay, logged back in. So let's see if we have any better luck here with our software center. Gonna launch that. And I'm thinking it should, now that we ran the update and did a restart. So if you run into that problem, just run your update, restart the computer, and it should be fine. There it is. Excellent. Well, dodge that bullet. I would have had to try to think of what to say if it didn't work. All right. So this has got a new look here, our software center. The categories right off the bat look different. Here we got create, work, play, develop, learn, and socialize. So our categories are definitely different here. Then we have our editor's choice, which is familiar. And then other categories featuring codecs. Nice. I like that, that it's categorized. input sources, localization, fonts, hardware drivers. Very cool. All right, so creative software, I guess if you're looking for Inkscape and GIMP and things like that, you would just kind of jump in here. And of course, those need a second to kind of get downloaded, those icons, because again, this is a first time run on the Software Center. So wow, very nice. Looks beautiful to me. Work, I'm assuming that's probably like Office products, maybe web browsers and email clients and stuff like that would be in here. And that should be populating here in just a second. And again, when you run this a second time, then it should be just fine. So here we got cool stuff, our editor's choice, Gnome boxes and GNU cache, agenda, Chromium web browser. So if you want a different browser, there's a good spot for it. FCITX5, that's great if you want a different input method, like maybe running Chinese Pinyin, simplified or traditional. And then we got Play, games developed for other software, probably like IDE and coding software and stuff like that. Yeah, nice. And Jota, that's a pretty cool IDE. It's got a lot of potential anyway. So really nice. I like this Software Center. I think it looks great. And of course, if you want quicker access to just find something what you need, you can just hit the search button up here and just type in something like Brave browser, I'm assuming might be in here. No, I guess that's probably available through the Snap if you're on Ubuntu, but I guess you would have to go out to the website and get that, so not a good choice. How about OBS Studio? Wow, that kind of shocks me. No OBS. Okay, a little bit at a loss there. If we went under Create, just kind of wondering if it's there. That seems like kind of a weird thing not to be available right in the software store. So what would I do under this situation? Well, I guess firstly I would just pop in my settings here and kind of look at our software repositories, see what we got loaded in here. And we got our Fedora, our packages, Fedora 35, blah, blah. Yeah, nothing is jumping out at me yet. Our third-party repositories are there in Flathub. So that should be working. I'm not really sure why I'm not seeing that in there. I'm pretty sure OBS is available out at Flathub. What about Kdenlive? Fascinating. And that's kind of one of the reasons I like using the terminal for software install. Let's see if we can see those in the terminal. If I do a sudo dnf install, or you can just do in for short, but I'll just type it out. OBS Studio. No match. Yeah, that's bizarre. A head scratcher. So let's try updating Flatpak and see if that works. Let's uninstall it and reinstall it. I think this must be an issue with software, Fedora software. So I'm going to remove Flatpak. Let's go with skip broken. No guts, no glory. Fortune favors the bold, right? Oh. Well. Wonder if the GNOME plugin maybe is not plugged in or installed. I think that would be GNOME Flatpak. Maybe GNOME Software plugin. Flatpak. See what that does. Well, cool and groovy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to jump out here and I'm going to go to flathub.org. To me, it looks like that the GNOME software probably has a problem. If I was just going to guess off the top of my head, I would think that maybe there's a bug going on with GNOME software. So I'll just jump out to flathub.org. Hit quick setup here. Click the Fedora icon. I'm just going to go ahead and hit this Flathub repository file and just let it open this. And I think this will reinstall it, even though it's already installed, I think. I think reinstalling it might help. We can only hope. Okay, it looks like that installed, theoretically. So if I back up here, let's just try it, see what happens. Perfect, that did the trick. Okay, so I guess if you run into that problem with something not showing up, there's no Flathub, so you just need to run out to flathub.org and follow the steps that I just did, and that should get you back up and running. Very cool. Glad to see that's there again. So if I hit that, it should show Flathub as the origin. So now that we got Flathub in there, this is going to show up, no problem. All you got to do is hit install and you got it. So that solved that problem. Wow. I guess the other one I tried was Kdenlive and it didn't see anything, which kind of surprised me actually, even without the Flathub. But if I hit that, there we go. So that's back. That solved the problem. I'm pretty sure that's a bug because that should work by default because the Flathub repository was already in there when we checked our settings. So that kind of tells me that it's just a minor little bug, and that would be the workaround. So I'm really glad that happened during this review, so we could address that. When mistakes like that happen or problems, it's nice to see them right up front here in the review. That way it's going to save you a little trouble if you get in there and you start doing things and you try to install something and you're like, what? So hopefully that was helpful. All right. So really that's the only little hiccup I'm seeing so far. And I don't really see that as a Fedora thing. That's more of a Gnome Software thing. So with that, I think we about covered it. And I got to tell you, I'm really liking this Fedora 35 here. It's looking really nice. The Gnome 41 is coming together really well. And the Gnome Software, I actually kind of like that too. The different look, to me, is very appealing for a GUI setup. So I'm glad to see that as well. And I'm especially happy to see that the third-party software stuff is available as an option. So it just sets up your Flathub and everything right off the bat and gives you the RPM Fusion and all the third-party and even proprietary options for drivers and software. I think that's a huge plus. That's one of my favorite pluses, I think, in the whole package here. I think that's probably, if the bug is related to Fedora in any ways, that would probably be the source of it, would be right there where you choose your third-party packages. There might be something in the script that's installing the repository, but not the actual Flathub plugin for Gnome Software itself. So maybe that's not getting installed after that option is selected. And so in that respect, that could be the problem with Fedora rather than Gnome Software. So yeah, before I'm too quick to pin it on Gnome Software, that's another possibility, I think, in my mind. But either way, now that we got a solution, not a big deal. Glad to see that it's all working, and I really like this. I do give this Fedora a double thumbs up. I think this is a really nice version of Fedora, and the fact that I don't have to go into that extra trouble to get the RPM Fusion in there and all that, which in the past really wasn't a big deal, but if you don't know about it, it's kind of a pain because you can kind of be left out in the cold and you didn't really have any options unless you did a little homework, a little research on Google if you were a first-time Fedora user and you needed extra access to other apps that you had to get through RPM Fusion. So to me, that's, in my opinion, bigger than the Gnome 41. So overall, I gotta say, this is nice. I like it. And by default, there aren't any extensions on, which is good. I think that's the way it should be. And in fairness to Gnome, the Gnome people have said that they are going to be more friendly towards extensions in the future. They're trying to work towards a way for them not to break extensions and GTK software in the future every time they do a major update. So I guess that remains to be seen. I think they're going to do that through the libadwaita library. So I think that has something to do with it. So let's hope that works. The people at Solus, Budgie, don't seem to be quite as confident about that because they're moving away from GTK. But if this libadwaita does pan out the way they're hoping, then that would be a major, major thing for GNOME. And I would really like to see that personally. And with that, I hope this review was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.